There are many negative stereotypes about American tourists. Loud, obnoxious, easily parted from their money, perhaps a bit overweight. I could go on for a while, and some of these are more true than others, but one that is unfortunately very accurate is the image of the American abroad who does not bother to learn the local language and instead expects everyone to speak English. Now, in a world where 5.1 billion people do not speak English, this represents an arrogant, outdated, and short-sighted mindset. And yet I'm sure many of us in this room have had experience abroad that reflects this. I know that I have. For example, when I was studying abroad in France last summer, locals would routinely speak to me in English because they assumed I didn't know anything else. Now, I've been studying French for 15 years. This paints a pretty depressing picture of the current state of foreign language education in the United States. There are deep-rooted systemic flaws with how we teach languages here in America, and changes need to be made in order to address the situation. So today I'd like to take some time to contextualize this issue for you, provide a couple changes that I think would help, and visualize or paint a picture for how America might look if these were implemented. So let's begin by examining the problem in greater detail. The fact of the matter is that American students are simply not being adequately prepared to speak languages other than English. And we're statistically far behind the rest of the developed world in our second language capabilities. In 2010, the Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, stated that only 18% of Americans could proficiently speak a second language, as compared to 53% of Europeans. And furthermore, of that measly 18%, the vast majority either learned their language in the home or spoke it natively. In fact, according to Dr. Brian Kaplan, a noted linguist at George Mason University, as recently as this year, only 1% of Americans reported being proficient in a second language that they had learned in school. Now think about that number for a second. That is astounding. 1%. And it really illustrates just how ineffective American foreign language education has become. This may be due to a lack of support from both the government and the American people. In spite of claims made by President Obama regarding the importance of second language education, in 2011, federal funding for foreign language programs was slashed by $50 million, and again by $27 million in 2012, according to Mary Ann Zier of Education Week. And perhaps as a result of this, fewer Americans are enrolling in foreign language courses. Between 2009 and 2013, the number of Americans enrolled in higher level foreign language courses declined for the first time in over 15 years, according to Amelia Friedman of The Atlantic. So clearly there is a problem here, but what can we be doing to address it? Well, foreign language education is a complex topic, and I'm by no means a world-renowned expert, but I would like to propose two legislative measures that I think would help to ameliorate the situation. Firstly, students nationwide should be required to take foreign language courses in order to earn their high school diplomas. There's currently no such federal requirement, and therefore policies differ very widely between the states. For example, in 2010, 21 different states had no type of foreign language requirement for their students at all, according to the National Center for State Supervisors for Languages. And many other states allow their high schoolers to supplement or substitute their foreign language courses with fine arts, technical, or career education courses. In contrast, nationwide foreign language learning requirements are the norm in Europe, where, as we've previously seen, second language proficiency rates are much higher than in America. According to Kat Devlin of the Pew Research Center, an independent think tank, 29 different European nations require their students to learn at least one foreign language, and 20 of those require 2 languages. So perhaps taking a leaf out of Europe's book and requiring our own students to learn foreign languages might not be a bad idea. Additionally, I believe that foreign language classes should be required to be offered as early as elementary school. There's significant psychological evidence to indicate that languages are learned most effectively and fluently before puberty in what acclaimed neurologist Eric Lenneberg called the critical language learning period. After the critical period is passed, the brain begins processing unfamiliar languages very differently and it becomes almost impossible for somebody beginning to learn a language after their critical period to ever become as proficient as a native speaker. And it's the reason why, for some of us who may have taken Spanish all through high school, we now don't really have much of a mastery of the language a couple of years later. There's been numerous evidence from subsequent studies to confirm this phenomenon after Lenneberg, including a study that I myself was a researcher in a couple of years ago at the University of Illinois at Chicago. However, in spite of this evidence, only 25% of American elementary schools, public or private, and 58% of middle schools were offering any type of foreign language class at all, as recently as 2012, according to David Skorton and Glenn Altschuler of Forbes magazine. In contrast, European nations with foreign language learning requirements begin teaching their students no later than age 11, and in some cases, like in Belgium, as early as age 3. So once again, it appears as though Europe may have the right idea, and following their lead would be good for us. So let's take a moment to visualize how an America with these changes might look. Required foreign language education in high schools and the option to begin as early as elementary school would allow us to produce more linguistically versatile students. Every student in an American high school would have taken a foreign language class at some point in their career, which would inevitably help to increase that miserable 18% figure of Americans proficient in a foreign language. By offering languages starting as early as elementary school, Americans would also be more fluent, adept, and natural in the languages that we do speak, since we'd be taking advantage of our critical language learning period. This would also provide tangible benefits for Americans abroad. No longer would our students be at a competitive disadvantage when applying for jobs against multilingual applicants from overseas. Instead, we'd be better able to connect with the non-English speaking community, especially in developing nations where opportunities for growth abound. And of course, we'd be helping to chip away at those harmful stereotypes of Americans as idiots who can only speak English. That sounds like a world that I would really love to live in, and I hope that most of you would agree with me. So to recap, we've seen how foreign language education in the United States is in a deplorable condition. We've examined a few simple fixes that might help to ameliorate the problem, and we've looked at how they would change the status quo if implemented. Now, of course, there are many other measures that could be implemented to address other facets of this very complex issue, including increasing funding, promoting immersion programs, offering a wider variety of languages in schools, or ameliorating the quality of instruction within schools. And of course, these are things that should be addressed in the future. But I feel as though the two solutions that I've proposed tonight, requiring foreign language education for high school diplomas and offering it as early as elementary school, represent a solid point from which to start. If you're as passionate about this issue as I am, I really encourage you, write to your representative. And for those who are registered to vote in Davidson County, that would be Congressman Jim Cooper, who can be reached through his website at www.cooper.house.gov. I hope you'll join me in trying to improve the quality of foreign language education in America and helping to dispel once and for all those harmful stereotypes of Americans, of ourselves, as arrogant people who would rather force the world to speak our language than take the time to learn theirs. Thank you so much for listening.